What is nuclear war? Dangers of nuclear war for people. How to protect your life during a nuclear explosion. Hi friends, welcome to the Medliyn channel. Today, we want to talk about the nuclear war and how to keep it safe. So if you see our video for the first time, be sure to subscribe to the next attractive videos. Nuclear war refers to a conflict between nations or other parties that involves the use of nuclear weapons. It is a type of warfare where the primary weapons used are nuclear bombs or missiles, which release an immense amount of energy through nuclear reactions. These weapons derive their destructive power from the release of nuclear energy, either through nuclear fission, splitting atoms, or nuclear fusion, combining atoms. The consequences of a nuclear war can be catastrophic. The immediate effects include the massive destruction of infrastructure, loss of life, and the release of intense heat, blast waves, and radiation. The long-term effects can include the spread of radioactive fallout, which can contaminate the environment and cause severe health problems for survivors, as well as the potential for a nuclear winter phenomenon, where the release of large amounts of smoke and soot into the atmosphere could block sunlight and cause a global drop in temperatures. Given the devastating consequences of nuclear war, there have been significant efforts by the international community to prevent their occurrence. Treaties such as the Treaty on the Non-Proliferation of Nuclear Weapons, NPT, aim to curb the spread of nuclear weapons and promote disarmament. Additionally, diplomatic negotiations and arms control agreements have been pursued to reduce the risk of nuclear conflict and promote stability. Certainly, in addition to international efforts to prevent nuclear war, several doctrines and strategies have been developed by nations to deter the use of nuclear weapons. The concept of deterrence revolves around the idea that possessing a credible and overwhelming nuclear capability will dissuade potential adversaries from initiating a nuclear conflict due to the expected consequences. During the Cold War, the United States and the Soviet Union, the two major nuclear powers at the time, subscribed to a doctrine known as mutually assured destruction, MAD. MAD posits that if both sides possess enough nuclear weapons to ensure the total annihilation of the other, neither side would have an incentive to initiate a nuclear war, as the resulting retaliation would be catastrophic. Another strategy is that of nuclear brinkmanship, where a country intentionally escalates a crisis or conflict to the brink of nuclear war to gain leverage or compel the other party to back down. This approach carries substantial risks, as miscalculations or misunderstandings could lead to unintended nuclear escalation. In recent years, there has been growing concern about the potential for nuclear conflict due to the proliferation of nuclear weapons and tensions between certain nations. Efforts to denuclearize or reduce nuclear stockpiles remain ongoing, and diplomacy continues to play a crucial role in mitigating nuclear risks and promoting non-proliferation. It's important to note that the consequences of nuclear war are so severe that prevention and disarmament efforts are critical for the long-term survival and well-being of humanity. The international community continues to work towards a world with reduced nuclear threats and the ultimate goal of a world free of nuclear weapons. Nuclear war has been a growing threat ever since the Manhattan Project detonated the first atom bomb in the New Mexico desert 78 years ago. It's safe to say we're in the midst of an incredibly dangerous moment, where the use of nuclear weapons seems more possible now than at any time since the end of the Cold War. Stephen Miles, president of the activist organization Win Without War. If your city was under attack, you'd likely receive a wireless emergency alert, WEA, text on your cell phone, stating that missiles were on the way and to seek shelter immediately. The Emergency Alert System, EAS, would also send out the same alert message as the WEA across all types of television and radio broadcasts, including satellite, cable, and wireless systems. On top of that, the president may choose to send out a presidential alert to cell phones nationwide. What to do after a nuclear attack? The minutes to hours after a nuclear blast are a critical window. The potential for radiation exposure decreases 55% an hour after an explosion and 80% after 24 hours, according to the Johns Hopkins Center for Health Security. Immediate actions during those first few hours, like covering your eyes or hunkering down in an indoor shelter, could mitigate your risk of death or serious injury. Here's how to protect yourself in a worst-case scenario. First 30 minutes, avert your eyes and shield your face. The best course of action is simply to avert your eyes. When a nuclear bomb strikes, it sets off a flash of light and a giant orange fireball. A 1 megaton bomb, about 80 times larger than the little boy atomic bomb dropped on Hiroshima, Japan, could temporarily blind people up to 13 miles away on a clear day and up to 53 miles away on a clear night. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention also recommends dropping to the ground with your face down and your hands tucked under your body to protect from flying debris or sweltering heat that could burn your skin. If you have a scarf or handkerchief, cover your nose and mouth, but make sure to keep your mouth open so your eardrums don't burst from pressure. Research also suggests that if you're in an above-ground building, avoid narrow hallways and doorways, which can act like a wind tunnel, accelerating the detonation's shock waves to dangerous bone-crushing pressures. Instead, seek shelter along walls in large, open spaces and avoid rooms with windows, if you can. First 45 minutes. Seek shelter indoors away from windows. A single nuclear weapon could result in tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands, of immediate deaths in a major city like New York or Washington. The number of casualties depends on the size of the weapon, where it's detonated, and how many people are upwind of the blast. Survivors of a nuclear attack would have about 15 minutes before sand-like radioactive particles, known as nuclear fallout, reach the ground. Exposure to fallout can result in radiation poisoning, which can damage the body's cells and prove fatal. People should ideally look for shelter in the opposite direction of fallen buildings. You'd want to go in the direction away from the wind, Redliner said, adding, "Get as far away as you can in the next 10 to 15 minutes, and then immediately seek shelter before the radiation cloud descends. The best shelters are buildings like schools or offices with few to no windows and a basement for camping out. If there aren't sturdy buildings nearby, it's still better to be indoors than outside. If you take cover in a multi-story building, choose a central location and steer clear of the top and bottom floors. If the building has windows, stand in the center of a room. Shock waves can shatter windows up to 10 miles away from an explosion, resulting in flying glass that could injure people nearby. First 24 hours. Rinse off in the shower and stay inside. The hours after a blast are critical for reducing radiation exposure. Doctors can often treat radiation damage with substances such as potassium iodide, though there are certain dose levels that you can't do anything about, Catherine Higley, a professor of nuclear science at Oregon State University, told Insider. But in a disaster scenario, there may not be enough physicians or hospital beds to care for everyone. There are not enough empty burn beds in all of the United States to deal with even a single nuclear attack on one city in the US, Tara Drozdenko, the director of the Union of Concerned Scientists Global Security Program, told Insider. People who were outside during an explosion should shower as soon as possible, making sure the water is warm and soap is applied gently. Scrubbing too hard could break your skin, which acts as a natural protective barrier. You should also cover any cuts or abrasions while rinsing off. Complete these same steps for pets too. Don't use conditioner, body lotion, or face cream after exposure to a nuclear blast, since these products can bind to radioactive particles and trap them in your skin and hair. Blow your nose and wipe your ears and eyelids, since debris could get stuck in these places. The CDC also recommends sealing outer layers of clothing in a plastic bag, along with any tissues or cloths used to wipe your body or face. It's safe to consume food from sealed containers such as packages, bottles, or cans, according to the CDC. You can also eat items from your pantry or refrigerator, as long as you wipe off containers, cookware, counters, and utensils. But anything left uncovered, such as fruits or veggies from a garden, would be unsafe to eat. Unless you're told to go outside, it's best to stay put until the risk of contamination has gone down. The U.S. Department of Health and Human Services recommends staying indoors for at least 24 hours after a nuclear explosion. First 7 days. Listen to the radio or television for next steps. The World Health Organization recommends listening to the local radio for information and advice on next steps. Your cell phone, television, and internet probably won't work, but battery-powered and hand-crank radios should. Over the radio, authorities may advise you to stay put or issue an evacuation to a safer area. This is where you'll also likely learn about available medical aid, if you or someone with you is sick.
If you venture outside, know that nuclear fallout will be raining from the sky. Most fallout from a nuclear blast takes about a week to return to the ground. To reduce exposure, cover your mouth and nose with a damp cloth when you go outside. and make sure you don't have any exposed open wounds. Also, avoid any food that's directly exposed to open air like fresh produce or open water supplies. Ultimately, the best thing you can do is remain indoors for the first week, while the majority of nuclear fallout settles back down to the ground. This story, which was originally published in March 2022, has since been updated and published amid Russia's continued nuclear threats.
1. Distance. The more distance between you and the fallout particles, the better. An underground area such as a home or office building basement offers more protection than the first floor of a building. 2. Shielding. The heavier and denser the materials, thick walls, concrete, bricks, books, and earth, between you and the fallout particles, the better. 3. Time. Fallout radiation loses its intensity fairly rapidly. In time, you will be able to leave the fallout shelter. Radioactive fallout poses the greatest threat to people during the first 2 weeks, by which time it has declined to about 1% of its initial radiation level. People in most of the areas that would be affected could be allowed to come out of shelter within a few days, and if necessary, evacuate to unaffected areas. The heaviest fallout would be limited to the area at or downwind from the explosion. It might be necessary for those in the areas with highest radiation levels to shelter for up to a month. Thank you for being with me so far in the video. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to subscribe to the channel.